we have to look at your skill set, and what are you doing now? Has your experience been in the past? What would you like your future to look like? Are the hours important? Are your weekends off important? Your nights? Do you have a family? How much money do you have, to invest, or at least good credit? And please do not leave your job. Whatever you do before you get something started, you do not leave your job. That's so important to getting a loan. That is so important to giving you still that security. There are plenty of franchises out there that you can, be part of, that you can do simultaneously while keeping your job until that pretty much, either opens up or, gets ramping up within 4 to 6 months. So my advice is always don't leave your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people think, well, I have to quit my job to start this new. How do I do that? I don't have the savings. I don't have enough money to do that. And then have a down payment, for a franchise. The franchise disclosure agreement has an item 19. That item 19 tells that franchisee, and that's if they have one. Some don't have one, but they're great franchises, but most of them, would have one. And if they do, they'll show the bottom line, like we're making all this amount of money or whatever, but you don't really know that,
right.
So I always tell them, I said, don't get caught up on that, because one, we're going to be caught up on your skills, your skill set, have your involvement in the business, or who you're going to have, with you involved, who's going to run it, what territory you're in, all of those things come to play. But more importantly is you're going to get to validate that brand with other franchisees. And I always tell them, we're going to ask to talk to franchisees that have been in it for a short time, a middle time, and towards the end of their cycle, that 10-year agreement, or perhaps they've renewed that 10-year agreement. Would you do it again? That's definitely one question I always tell them to, ask at the end of their conversation. But when you validate that brand with other franchisees, that's when you're really allowed to say, hey, what did you do last month? How much are your expenses? How much, would you say, your employees, your labor percent was, how realistic is this? How realistic is that? That's when you really, and we give them this set of questions to ask, not just to ask the franchisor as they're going through the process with them. We give them those questions to make sure that they're checking off all those boxes and getting all those answers. But we also give them the information, that the questions that they're going to ask a franchisee. My parents came here, we lived in Cuba, and I was about 7 years old. So my parents came here to make a life for themselves. And my mother would basically leave my dinner, and, I would eat it while she went to work, and my father was already at work. So that was kind of the dinner table.
Yeah. Amazing. What was it like back in Cuba, growing up in Cuba? I mean, do you have many memories back then?
I remember some of it, but not a whole lot. I mean, I was 7 years old. So, I just remember, I didn't miss a meal or anything like that. So we didn't exactly live in the, real poverty, level as some do, thankfully. Right. But I did have, parents that, took care of me, and, the needs, the clothes, and the schools, and, things like that. So there was definitely no issues there, but
fantastic.
it's definitely much different than the US. Right. So I do remember
sure.
my father was a construction general contractor, and, he managed projects and things like that. And my mother on the side would sell popsicles,
Wow.
in the afternoon. So she would, do popsicles, and the kids would come up to the window and, buy their little popsicles and things like that. And then my father on the side made shoes.
Oh, wow.
Sandals. He made sandals. Yeah. So they always had that entrepreneurial mind, right?
And that's what I just was going to say is it sounds like you had that inspiration from early on. So, do you feel like that, is sort of, shaped your trajectory, what you wanted to do? Did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or was it, is that something?
No, I actually, I saw myself as a lawyer in New York, after college, but that never happened. So, I did, always had that entrepreneurial spirit, just based on, if my parents can do it, coming with a child with 7 years old to the US with their clothes on their back, why wouldn't I? haven't had all the opportunities, in this country to make something of myself.
Sure. Yeah. No, makes perfect sense. So what did you do after you graduated college? Did you start going, were you working in whatever you studied in college for a while,
I
or was it?
actually, no, well, I worked for a marketing company at the time. I do have a marketing bachelor's degree and a master in international business, but I worked for a marketing company for, a very short time, probably about 6 months to 8 months.
Mhm.
And then I moved from Houston, Texas, where I grew up, to South Florida. So here I just, I began my world in the insurance industry as an insurance adjuster. So
Okay.
I worked there for about 4 years, and then I went to pharmaceuticals, and I was a pharmaceutical representative for about 4 years.
Okay. Okay.
So, one day I just had enough, I felt like there was more to life than to just follow, someone else's path of success. And I
Hmm.
realized that I wanted to, build an asset that did something for me, right? So I
Yeah.
came home on a hot, sweaty day in the summer and, wearing suits and going, knocking on doctors' doors. And
Yeah.
you kind of said, I had a great job. I had a company car. I had, everything paid for, and a pretty good salary. As you know, pharmaceutical reps get paid
Sure.
well. But I wanted more, and I
Yeah.
wanted to actually build, an asset for myself and my future. So I did
Yeah. You wanted that
through
freedom. Yeah.
franchising.
Yeah. Yeah. And what drew you to franchising? I mean, obviously there's all kinds of different ways that you could go with that. Starting your own thing, joining somebody else, partnering. What drew you to franchising?
I wanted something that I didn't have to reinvent the wheel.
Hmm.
And I saw my parents do it from the ground up. But my father, owned a couple of barbecue restaurants in Texas and stuff, but they were all himself. There wasn't
Hmm.
any, franchise or anything like that. But I do believe that, with franchising, all the hard work is done for you.
Yeah.
So when you come in, you just follow the plan, just like you do when you work for a job, but you have the flexibility and freedom, of your own time,
Hmm.
as you wish, without, a boss over you. Or, not necessarily a boss, but just corporate America, having to, have you meet certain quotas or, things that you need to meet, for
Yeah.
them, or
Yep.
you can't take 2 weeks off this time of year because somebody else is
It's a
taking
busy.
that time of
Oh,
year.
I
So
see. Yeah. 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 What industry did you get involved in when you first launched, or when you first?
I was in the food industry. So
Okay.
I purchased a smoothie bar, national brand. So I did that for a little over 18 years.
Wow.
So
Wow. Very cool. And now, what are you focused on today? Are you helping people get into franchising at this
yes,
point? Yeah.
yes, I absolutely love what I do because I get to give back, and I
Yeah.
get to, and I get emotional because this is like just my baby, of the fact that I get to help other people just
Yeah.
really do, like, just I see people struggling and I see people just look at life like, oh, I can't do this. Yes, you can. This country offers so many opportunities, and it doesn't matter if you're at the bottom, it doesn't matter if you're in the middle or if you're at the top, as a top investors, because I deal with those too. I deal with
Hmm.
the people that have, money that they have no clue what to do with. They just know they don't want to stick it in the stock market, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
But it does make me emotional because I've taken people from nothing to actually building a life for themselves. And sorry, I get emotional.
No, I love it. I love it. That's great when when you're that invested and that passionate about it. What were some of the things that what really drew you toward this? I mean, was it that you wanted to be able to help people? I mean, was there some kind of a catalyst that you realized at one point, hey, I've got a lot of experience. I can help all of these people that seem to be struggling. I mean, was that the main motivator
Exactly.
to?
Yeah. I mean, I just saw, I hear from friends or I hear from other people, how much they, they don't like their job, or, it's just that week to week, paycheck. And, they're so hooked on what I call that W-2 crack,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they don't know how to exit that. They don't know, how to, basically start, doing their own thing, but with the support, of a franchisor,
Hmm.
so that's the predominant reason. Is just because, like I said, I saw my parents come with nothing, and make something up themselves. But I saw my father do it from the ground up, which, was painful. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a lot more work. It took a lot more time for the success to happen, a lot more years than it did for me. when
Yeah.
I started, because even though I took that brand was just basically an emerging franchising brand at the time, I blew it up here in South Florida.
Hmm.
So, I helped, create that brand, what it is today, and I love that I've learned so much, from beginning to end, because as an owner operator, to, stepping back and scaling and letting others take the reins, and, developing a team and having multiple units, because I had 5 units. And, it's just, I know that if I can do it, I can help others do it too.
Yeah. What would be, let's start walking down that path. Let's say that I'm unhappy with my job. What types of things do I need to be aware of, and what things do I need to bring to the table in order to be able to start a franchise? And it sounds like you got in sort of on the ground floor of an emerging franchise opportunity. Are there ways to be able to identify those types of things? I guess
Absolutely. I
that's a
mean,
lot of questions, I guess.
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I always say, had I had a franchise consultant like myself, back then, to
Mhm.
help me through the skill sets that I had, my degrees, my experience, and all of that, I always say I would have never ended up in food,
Yeah.
because that was why I never got involved, after college with my father, because I really didn't want to end up in food. But where did I end up? In food.
Yeah.
Because first of all, most people, what do they think when you say the word franchising? What do they think of? They think of the big brands like,
Yeah.
McDonald's,
McDonald's. Yeah.
everybody wants a Chick-fil-A, but everybody doesn't understand that, those are completely different, models, than what you could really have a life with.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, in my view or understanding of, what I've done is, we have to look at your skill set, and what are you doing now? Has your experience been in the past? What would you like your future to look like? Are the hours important? Are your weekends off important? Your nights? Do you have a family? How much money do you have, to invest, or at least good credit? And please do not leave your job.
Mhm.
Whatever you do before you get something started, you do not leave your job. That's so important to getting a loan. That is so important to giving you still that security. There are plenty of franchises out there that you can, be part of, that you can do simultaneously while keeping your job until that pretty much, either opens up or, gets ramping up within 4 to 6 months. So
Yeah.
my advice is always don't leave your job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, and a lot of people think, well, I have to quit my job to start this new. How do I do that? I don't have the savings. I don't have enough money to do that, and then have a down payment, for a franchise.
Yeah. How do you get started? Let's say that you don't have very much money. Are there ways or places you can go to get, some type of a small business loan, even if you don't necessarily have much credit?
Yes,
How
I
does
mean,
that?
having high credit or good credit and not having any money makes it, of course, very challenging if you don't have both, right? Or one
Yeah.
or the other at least. So we look at, do they have a 401k plan? Do they own a home?
Yeah.
Do they own any other property? Do they have a partner, a mom, a dad, anybody? Right now I actually deal with some parents that are dealing with challenging situations where, the son or daughter doesn't want to go to college.
Hmm. Hmm.
What do I do with them? I mean, they're not going to sit on my couch, all
Yeah.
day long and not do anything with their lives. So, I help them look into, franchising that, their son or daughter can be part of, and they can help them, get going, not just financially, but also experience wise.
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
one aspect, one side. But there's also, people think that for franchising, you need a lot of money. There are franchises that you can do for under $100,000. So as
Hmm.
long as you have a little something, or we work with you to tell you how much money you need to save, and let's say you don't have it today, but let's say you're on a plan and on track, to, what, have it in a year,
Yeah.
have it in a year and a half. It's better than not having a plan at all, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's some of the things that I work with, with people, understanding the franchising world, that it's not necessarily, $500,000, to open up a franchise.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. What are some of the things, like you mentioned, you look at the skill sets that the person has, what types of things they like to do. Is there any, I guess, pre-work that someone can do? Because, a lot of people might say, well, I've worked in an office my entire life. What skills do I have? Like, how do you identify what you might want to do, or what even opportunities there are out there that would be a good fit for whatever things you feel you're interested in, or whatever skill sets you bring to the table?
Well, there's over 80 industries. So when we look at industries, whether it's the pet industry or the healthcare industry, you have, the automotive industry, the spa, the health and beauty industry, you have the gyms. So there's so many different industries, and within those industries, there are small, medium, and large franchises that have opportunities. So in looking at the person's skill set, everybody's got something that they can offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a matter of who you are. Even those that think that I got nothing. I mean, you just haven't honed in on it yet to really learn the process. So I do have like a business assessment that we send out to, our clients, and they take the business assessment, and that helps me understand how they make business decisions.
Mhm.
What basically is important to them, categorizing, certain responses in certain ways. So that helps bring me, are you somebody that, you work best when, you build relationships, you want to help other people, are you more, and that's called a societal, right? So you care about the environment, you care about other people, expanding their life or doing things, or are you more of that, achiever director person that, what, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you just want to make money, right?
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
all have those, as well. There's also those that are called like, the belongers. So, that person loves to be a part of something, be, eating, breathing the brand, and having other people to call out, and they go on vacations together, and that does exist, within the franchise systems, depending on the culture of that particular franchise. So culture is huge. That's
Mhm.
one of the things that has to be a great fit, right along with skills.
Yeah.
And right along with that comes, do you want to work? Are you okay working nights? Are you okay working weekends? Do you want an 8 to 5? And those are all things that people don't think about. And the most important one of all is, how do you want to exit your business?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that people don't think about. People always think, I'm looking for a business, that get into a business, but then never think about, how am I going to exit that business? Am I going to will it to my kids? Am I going to, sell it to my employees? Am I going to close it? Am I going to sell it?
Yeah.
So those are 4 ways, to exit.
And with a franchise, I mean, I'm assuming that the goal is to build it, build the advertising, build the marketing, build the the community awareness about that particular business. And then is it just like any other business where you're essentially valuing it based on the income that it's able to produce? Is that basically, how
Yeah, I
that
mean,
would work if you were to?
it's typically how you value, a business based on the return on investment as well as your cash flow. More
Yep.
importantly, it's your cash flow. So, that's what, accountants and, business investors are going to look like. What's my cash flow going to look like? And that's what you're going to multiply, typically anywhere between 2 to 4 times.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
again, you're building an asset.
Yeah.
And as you're building an asset, like, for example, had I stayed with my pharmaceutical company, I couldn't turn around and sell my territory.
Yeah.
Right. But if I go and I get involved and I, buy let's say an electrician, type of service company, I hire electricians, they're the ones doing the job. I'm the one, running my company, I'm building a business. So at the end of the, whatever time I want to sell it in 5 years, I can sell it. I've built an asset.
Yeah. Yep.
So
That makes perfect sense. What are some of the mistakes that you see a lot of people making, when they maybe get involved with a franchise, or they didn't come and consult you first? What are some of those things that commonly pop up as being oopses as you look back on them?
and I saw this through, my own franchise, that I owned, is people think that because they see others within the system being successful, that they're going to be successful.
Mhm.
They fail to look at their territory, how saturated it may be, or they fail to look at, their own skill sets, and what I'm willing to do. They don't ask those questions, and they think that money is the only thing that's important, and is not.
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, it's, it's your business. So you're going to be eating, breathing it, sleeping on it, waking up on it in every way, shape, and form. So you want to make sure you enjoy what you're doing and that you get that satisfaction.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. What and have you been in a situation where a franchise, like someone bought into the wrong franchise and the franchise essentially disappeared, they went bankrupt, whatever? I mean,
Not
is
at
that
this time.
still, yeah,
Yeah, I
that
mean, it can happen, but yeah, not at this time, because the franchises that I do, deal with are pretty solid,
okay.
and what I look for the most is the support that they provide. How vested are they in my franchisee or your franchisee? Because it's really will be
Yeah.
theirs, right? So, but in my client, how vested will you be? What's the culture like? So that's why it's important that, whether they work with me or they're working with someone, work with someone,
Yeah.
it's kind of like the differences. I always put it in this perspective. It's kind of like going out and looking for a house on your own, and going out and looking for a house with a realtor, right?
Hmm.
So a
Hmm.
realtor is probably going to show you maybe another area that you didn't even know existed, another little pocket of homes that, oh, wow, I didn't know this little gem area was here, and look how cute they are. So, you're looking through their eyes and their experience,
Hmm.
at a business to, invest in, and I don't charge a fee to my clients. Once we get to the point that they've narrowed it down to 2 to 3 franchises, we try to then narrow it down to 2, and then we weigh, and then they go forth, and look at
Hmm.
both. I don't, if they come to me and they tell me I want this and this is the only one I want, and I'm very reluctant to work with somebody like that, because it's not someone who's open-minded, in
Yeah.
understanding themselves first before they really just look at, well, the person down the street, or in 2 towns down is like making a killing, and the line is at the door. Well, that's not the case for you. It may not be, a
Yeah.
business for you. So,
Yeah.
and I
So
saw
what,
that with, with the franchise that I was in, because people came in and they think that, they could do it just like we were doing, our businesses, but it wasn't the case. A year to 2 years later, they were closing, and it broke my heart to see,
yeah.
because they take their savings. A lot of them took their 401ks, or they borrowed money, or their money against their home, as an equity loan, and they failed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. What are some of the things that if someone is looking at a franchise, are there like warning signs? Like you mentioned the support. I'm sure that, franchisors can sell you the world, right? I'm going to support you. We're going to do this, this, and this for you. Are there any warning signs that you should be on the lookout for, maybe that, you know, aren't necessarily what they're telling you? Like, are there any things that you should maybe even be getting or asking for from them, so that you can realize that, yeah, this is a real deal franchisor, that they are going to be
Absolutely.
there?
Yeah, it all comes down to, the franchise disclosure agreement has an item 19. That item 19 tells that franchisee, and that's if they have one. Some don't have one, but they're great franchises,
Hmm.
but most of them, would have one. And if they do, they'll show the bottom line, like we're making all this amount of money or whatever, but you don't really know that,
Right.
So I always tell them, I said, don't get caught up on that, because one, we're going to be caught up on your skill set, have your involvement in the business, or who you're going to have, with you involved, who's going to run it, what territory you're in, all of those things come to play. But more importantly is you're going to get to validate that brand with other franchisees. And
Yeah.
I always tell them, we're going to ask to talk to franchisees that have been in it for a short time, a middle time, and towards the end of their cycle, that
Hmm.
10-year agreement, or perhaps they've renewed that 10-year agreement. Would you do it again? That's definitely one question I always tell them to, ask at the end of their conversation. But when you validate that brand with other franchisees, that's when you're really allowed to say, hey, what did you do last month?
Yeah.
How much are
Yeah.
your expenses? How much, would you say, your employees, your labor percent was, how realistic is this? How realistic is that? That's when you really, and we give them this set of questions to ask,
Mhm, mhm.
Not just to ask the franchisor as they're going through the process with them. We give them those questions to make sure that they're checking off all those boxes and getting all those answers, but we also give them the information, that the questions that they're going to ask a franchisee.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes
And
perfect.
then of course their own questions that they might have,
Yeah,
but we pretty much cover them all, on that sheet of paper, and then some, like I said, that they may have. So
yeah, yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And are there any industries, I guess, ranking industries, and maybe this goes back to the skill sets or the experience of the person, but are there any industries that, you would say are more difficult than other types of industries to be involved in a franchise in?
well, it all depends, again, on the skill set of the person, right?
Hmm.
So, a lot of people come to me with food, predominantly, because they just think that it's easy. It's not. It's
Yeah.
probably one of the hardest industries, not just to be in, but it's also the hardest industries to get a loan for.
Okay.
But you can get a loan. It's just the hardest one, and in the one that you have to be more cautious, because you've got to be more active. So from an investor point of view, it all depends who your manager is going to be, who's going to
Hmm.
oversee, especially if you're buying, let's say, a 3-pack, multiple units in this town, who's going to run those businesses? Is it you? Or are you just simply the investor, and you're going to have a manager in place? That manager is the one that makes the difference, whether your franchise is going to be successful or not, because you're just an investor, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
So,
Wh- what are some of the things that um I guess people should be on the lookout for, for a franchise? Like, again, is there, I'm just trying to think, like you mentioned locations and 3-pack, 4-pack, like, is there a way to be able to qualify, you know, what, maybe this one has 2 good locations and 1 bad location. How do you identify whether or not it's a good location or a bad location? If you're just looking at it and you see, it's on the corner of a street, or, corner of main street, is there any way to be able to say, yeah, that one should be, worth this much, or, we should value it
well,
at this much because of the traffic, or
it's right.
anything like
It's all
that?
based on demographics. So it's based on traffic counts, of that corner, it's based on the, household income in that area, and again, the type of business that you are, right? So, what's the disposable income? If you're doing a health and beauty and it's a luxury brand, what I like to call a sexy brand, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's going to, require, that disposable income. So you want to make sure that you're in areas that are affluent, for that brand.
Hmm.
In terms of, food, it again depends on, the type of food that you're offering, and the growth trend that there is going for that particular type of food. Let's
Hmm.
say it's Greek food, am I going into an area that would be, receptive to, having a Greek restaurant,
Yeah.
in this corner? So
It,
all of those things come to play, but the franchisor is the one that helps you from
uh,
beginning to end to find that location.
I see.
They have all of those, programs in place, and then they have a representative designed that comes out to you. You ride around the area, you look at different locations, that have already been sent to them by commercial realtors, and then it's approved, they'll get approval on a location, or they may not find a location. They may not,
Yeah.
maybe flying back wherever they're from, and go back home, and we're back to the drawing board, back and forth with the commercial realtor.
Yeah. How long does it normally take from the time when you identify, this is the franchise that I want, and say all the pieces are in place, this is where it's going to go? How long does it take to get up and running typically, would you say? And maybe that even depends on what type of franchise it is.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely depends on the type of franchise, because if you're looking at a food, brick and mortar, it all depends, again, on the location, the county that you're going to be in, the city that you're in, because you've got to submit plans for a build out, right?
Hmm.
So now
Hmm.
you're dependent on that city to approve your plans to then have the general contractor, begin, the build out of that location. But in the process of negotiating, I mean, I've taken 4 to 6 months just to negotiate a lease,
Yeah. Yeah.
one of my locations, and at the end of the day, that lease didn't pan out. We ended up moving to, like not going with that particular lease. And we went, looked at other location. We went back to the drawing board. So that can certainly happen. So
Yeah.
that's why I always say, don't leave your job. You don't leave your job until those doors are ready to open.
Yeah.
If you're doing a brick and mortar, if you're not doing a brick and mortar, it's a lot easier because you can do that. Some of the franchises you can start while you're still doing your job. Now, again, depends on the job you have, right? So, a lot of, like now with, after COVID, occurring, we have a lot of home-based businesses that,
Mhm.
are franchises, now, and they've opened opportunities for people like, moms, for example, that now have kids that are in school and they don't know what to do with themselves,
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
the day. So, there's different businesses that they can do, between the hours of, let's say 8 to 2 when they, right when they pick up the kids, that allows them to, generate some income home, but not be, completely 100%, of all of their time taken by a business.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Millie, this is fantastic. I've had a number of businesses that I started over the years, and franchises has always been something that I've looked at before in the past, and this is interesting. It's always eye-opening being able to learn from people that have been there and done that. So thanks for being on the show here today. If people want to learn more about you or your services, what would be the best way to reach out and get in touch?
I'm very personable, so you are welcome to text me. My, cell number is 786-417-4004. You also have my website, which is mkbusinessadvisors.com. So you can also reach out to me there as well. And my email is mmedrano, MEDRANO at Yahoo. I'm sorry, at gmail.com.
Excellent.
Those
Excellent. I
are
love
3
it.
ways.
Love
But
it. Thanks.
texting is always great. That's usually the easiest, and I'm very quick to text back. So
Love
just
it.
let me know who you are, how you heard about me, and then I'll just text you back and,
There you
be
go.
glad to help. And like I said, my services are free. I just, really from the bottom of my heart would love to help, as many people as I can,
Yeah.
change their lives.
I love it. And you would do this anywhere in the country?
Anywhere,
Basically?
yeah, and
Yeah.
nationwide,
Yeah.
nationwide. We have a couple that are worldwide, but I pretty much, predominantly I'm nationwide. So anywhere. So if you're in Seattle and you hear this podcast and you like who I am or what I have to offer, by all means, reach out. Just keep in mind I'm 3 hours ahead.
Yep. Yep.
So being in South Florida, and vice versa, right? That's another thing too, that as a broker I have to, keep in mind people's time where
Yep.
they're actually
Yep.
located.
Yeah, no, I love it. Millie, this is fantastic. Thanks for the time, and love what you're doing. Love that you're inspiring
Thank
others to
you.
start their own thing and get out there and change their own lives. So kudos to you.
Absolutely. It's up to you. Only you can do it.
Exactly. Exactly.